sorry, got cut off there. You can't throw rice at weddings. And the reason why you're not supposed to, in this law, throw rice at weddings is because the birds will eat it and their stomachs will explode. Well, that's physically impossible because you have to cook the rice. And unless you're cooking the bird full of rice, the rice isn't going to cook. So they made this law where you can't, because they made this a reality assumption that the birds were eating the rice. It was expanding in their stomach. Their stomachs were exploding and they were dying. It's not true. It's not true. So you are now free to throw rice at your wedding, unless you're in Idaho or wherever that law is. But that's why people will throw bird seed instead, because the birds will eat it. Myths. There's a little myth buster for you. All right, house flies. I always assume they only live 24 hours because once I watched Bug's Life, and you can see that link in the lecture. I watched Bug's Life, and one of the flies is like, I only got 24 hours to live, but I ain't gonna waste it here. And he like flies off, right? That flies off. Anyway, I assumed then that flies only lived 24 hours. And so I'd trap a fly like in the window screen and I'd close the door. I'm like, he'll die by tomorrow. No, he was alive. They live up to 24 days, probably longer than that. I don't really know the science on it, but it's up to about a month is their lifespan. All this time I thought it was 24 hours based on some assumption that I made based on a Disney movie, which maybe that's what the joke was. I have no idea. Anywho, or the wonderful myth of dogs' mouths are cleaner than ours, which is not true. So if you got dogs licking on your licking on your face, don't forget they probably licked their butt first. So there you go. All right. So why do we need to examine our reality assumptions? Just like I said, it could be very dangerous. And okay, we make the jokes about the rice and throwing rice and but sometimes we make these laws and these rules on things that are not true, and that has consequences for people. And we're looking at that right now, where people are making these reality assumptions based on their beliefs on something to be true when it's not true, and there are consequences to these actions. And we can go back to our our principles tests on chapter 2 and recognizing how these consequences will affect people. And when we can apply those tests, we can recognize, oh shit, the things that I'm doing are hurting people, and we're trying to avoid that. Okay, I'm trying to avoid that. I don't know what you're doing over here, but you might be the same way, right? So anyway, reality assumptions can be dangerous. On page 83, it actually talks about that too, about suicides, and how a public health reported that suicide is a major health problem, the second most common cause of death in adults ages 20 to 24. In recent years, the suicide rate had continued to climb in that county, the particular county they're talking about, Seattle-King County. The Seattle-King County medical examiner stated that most people assume homicide is a bigger problem than suicide because suicides are rarely reported in the media, right? So we're making these assumptions that homicide is more common than suicide, and then they're also attributing it to like the weather and all that stuff. So there's obviously so much more to suicides than just weather, right? I mean, that's not to say there's not something there that does, kind of push things to the edge when you don't get enough sunshine, whatever. Look at research and then you can see what's causing it, right? Anyway, when we're making certain assumptions, there are consequences to it if we're not paying attention to the research and the data and the things that are there to help us make the right decisions, okay? I would love it if you would go to page 88. I don't think I marked this. Sorry. You can fast forward this part. Oh, you can't fast forward the videos. Sorry. Okay. Gosh dang it, right when I'm in a hurry. Okay, so on 88, I want you to take a look at value assumptions, right? So understand the difference between value assumptions and reality assumptions. So like number 1, he should try out for the NFL right after high school. If he makes it, he won't need a college degree. All right, so the value assumption here is that the NFL is more important than college, right? Or even the reality assumption is that if he makes the NFL, he's not going to need college. All right, that's the reality assumption, which is because they value football more so than education. That's the statement there. The truth is, unfortunately, if you look at NFL, have you ever seen the guys who they'll randomly blow out their knee, just like they'll do a juke and they'll throw out their knee and they end their career and you can see them weeping as they're being taken off the field. It's like, oh, right? What's your backup plan? Okay. So in other words, understanding what reality assumptions are versus value assumptions and what's true, what's the most important thing to pay attention to, the actual truth. Okay. You can't go to the party in that outfit. No one will want to talk to you. All right. So the reality assumption is here is that the outfit's the reason why people wouldn't talk to this person. All right. And that's probably most likely not the case. But their value is on the outfit. And then their reality assumption is that because of said outfit, that people aren't going to talk to them. Okay. Let's see here. Charlene is really successful. She's only 28 and making $120,000 a year. God, I wish that'd be nice. Anyway, so their value here is age and money. The value assumption is that youth and money are what make you successful. Okay. And that's their reality assumption too, right? Okay. Value, money, and youth. The reality assumption here is that, I'm sorry, I keep shaking the table. The assumption is to have youth and money would make you successful. Okay. All right. I feel like I'm yammering. I'm sure you see all of this in your readings, blah, 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 blah. All right. How to prove or disprove reality assumptions or disputes. We're going to talk about inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is observations from statistical polling, right? Inductive means we look at the data, we point at it, and we go, that right there. That's how we know we're looking at that. We're looking at controlled experiments, probabilities, right? Probabilities of something consistently happening is inductive reasoning. Now, deductive reasoning is containing true reasons stated in the correct form, certainties, right? Deductive reasoning is what we're going to be pushing for this right now, like this particular chapter. Lost my train of thought. It's raining outside. I got excited. So we're going to be looking at deductive reasoning because that is going to be our syllogisms, our premises, like how we put something in a form to make an argument, right? Deductive reasoning arguments. Okay, anyway. So inductive reasoning, we gather evidence and analyze its significance. We're going to be talking about inductive reasoning later, using evidence and analyzing its significance. Right now, we're going to be talking deductive reasoning where we create arguments using formulas. I love this. This makes me super excited. I hope it does for you too. I'm going to show you why. Go ahead and take a look at the lecture notes so it makes more sense to you. I'm just kind of flying through my PowerPoint, so PowerPoint's a little iffy. Go to the lecture notes. It's just much easier. All right, deductive reasoning. We create arguments using formulas where we plug in the premise. I'll talk about what a premise is in just a second, and a valid format. I'm going to talk about what the formats are, okay? All right, I just love this stuff. I get super stoked. Plus, when you have the conversation with friends, people are like, what? Modus ponens? What is that? Like, it just sounds cool. Whatever. Okay, deductive reasoning. Make sure that we construct a valid argument, right? I'm going to show you real quick. Well, you're going to use the notes, but I'm going to talk about it. How to put things into an actual valid argument. You need to make sure you have it in a correct format. The premises, if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. If A equals, we'll talk about that in a second. If the premises are true, the conclusion will be true, okay? Quality control over the argument, right? So if you have those true premises which are true, creates a strong argument for your conclusion, okay? All right, if all the pieces are in place, we've made a sound argument, all right? So let's talk about syllogisms, okay? I'm gonna try and be fast about this one. Syllogisms usually consist of two premises and a reason. Please take a look at the notes. They're going to give you everything. You're going to see how they're all in order, okay? So syllogism, again, two premises. I wish I had my board up here. Maybe I'll get my board later. But you have two premises and a conclusion, okay? All right, the major premise is the larger categorical statement, right? That the main thing you're trying to say, the larger thing. The minor premise is the an instance or an example case, okay? We have your main statement, you have your example, and then you come to your conclusion, okay? So it's very similar to having your issue, your reasoning, and your conclusion. Does that make sense? I'm kind of trying to throw that in there. All right. The conclusion is usually inferred based on the fact that the two premises are true. All right. So the classic syllogism you probably have heard like a bazillion times. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's because I teach this often. I hear it all the time. About Socrates, right? All right, so here is the most classic syllogism to kind of help you understand. And I use this because you can kind of go back to it in your brain and go, okay, right? So here we go. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. Okay, so if A, then B. A, therefore B. Okay, well, let me talk about that in a second. That's going to confuse you. I'll get there. I'm sorry. Okay, all men are mortal. That's our major premise, right? That's our main statement. Socrates is a man. That's an example, right? That's our minor premise. And then Socrates is mortal is what we come to the conclusion, because if all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, that means Socrates is mortal. Get it? Okay. All right. So we're going to code them in letters, and what we call it a categorical statement. Okay. So I'm going to give you some categorical statements, and just go with me on this. Again, go to the notes, take a look at them. You can. For me, sometimes I'll print just a picture of what the PowerPoint is, so I have it to look at. You can do that too. You can take the notes, whatever you got to do. All right. Conditional syllogisms. Okay. So modus ponens. Modus ponens is if A then B, A therefore B. So you're like, how does that apply? So if all men are mortal, wait, if you're a man, you're mortal, right? If A then B. If you're a man, you're mortal. You're a man, A, so therefore you're mortal. Okay, therefore. So if A, if you're a man, then B, then you're mortal. Well, I'm a man, or whatever, human, then I am. Therefore, I am mortal, right? Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. All right. Modus tollens is actually if A, then B. Not A, therefore not B. So if I were to say, if you are a man, then you are... Okay, we're going to do it again with this one, but just go with me. If you're a man, then you're mortal. But you're not a man, so then you're not mortal. Okay, I'm using the word man, but I mean man as in, personhood, right? Person. If you're a person, you're mortal. You're not a person, so you're not mortal. All right, okay. That doesn't really work as well, but whatever. Okay, chain argument. So chain argument is a little bit different. So if A, then B. All right, if you are a man, you're mortal. If you're mortal, then you never die. You're a man, therefore you never die. It's the same damn thing. How do I put that in a better example? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that one. I usually do this in person, in class, and we use it as examples, and someone will throw it at me. So I'm kind of trying to think of how we could do a good one here. So anyway, when we talk about chain argument, right, you have if A, then B. Well, if B, then C, A, therefore C. In other words, all of them equal the same. All right, so if you are blonde, then you're smart. You're smart. If you're smart, then you'll succeed in school. All right, you're blonde, therefore you'll succeed in school. It's actually not a great argument, but you can see how you can trail that, right? Okay. All right, disjunctive syllogism. It's either A or B. It's not B, therefore it must be A. Or you could do it the other way around. If it's not A, therefore B, right? So you're either a man or a woman. Well, you're not a man, therefore you're a woman. And again, please forgive me. These are the best examples I can give. It's just trying to be wildly general. Forgive me on that one. All right, so either A or B. You're either a cat or you're a dog. I like that one better. You're either a cat or a dog. Well, you're not a cat, therefore you must be a dog. Or you're not a dog, therefore you must be a cat. I'm hoping this is helping you. Argument by elimination, either A, B, or C. Well, it's not B or C, so therefore it must be A. Okay? You're either a cat, a dog, or a bird. Well, you're not a dog, or you're a cat, a dog, or a bird. You're not a dog or a bird, therefore you must be a cat. Okay? It's a mouthful. I get excited. I love these. You know what? Go to page 91 and 93, and it's going to give you all the funsies, okay? I'm just trying to, do something a little different than the book. All right. Okay. Let's see what we got here. All right, let's go to antonyms. I love antonyms because I give you all kind of fun examples. Antonyms, it's an argument which one of the premises is not explicitly stated, right? So it's, major premise, minor premise, conclusion. The major premise, if you don't state the major premise and you only have the minor premise, then you're making assumptions when you come to the conclusion. I hope this is not blowing you out of the water. I'll give you examples and it will help you. So antonyms use assumptions, right? So we're making an assumption. We don't have both premises. We don't know what of these two things is there. We only have one of the two to make this conclusion, right? We only have either the major or the minor premise to come to this conclusion. If you're missing one, we're making an assumption, right? Because we don't have all the pieces. Okay. A syllogism with a key part or parts are implied rather than stated directly, right? We don't say the thing, It's kind of implied, so that's how we're coming up to our conclusion. And again, the key parts are the major premise, the minor premise, and the conclusion. So one of those is missing, all right? They're dangerous, and we use them all the time, all right? You see them in ads. Politicians love doing this. People do it on social media. I'll give you some examples. Sometimes the way we challenge people using entomemes is to ask for the warrant, right? Ask for the thing in between. And again, the warrant's that, the unstated link between the two, reason and the claim. Okay, so here is an example. He could not have committed murder. I've known him since he was a kid. Right? So what are we missing here? All right, we're missing that hidden premise, right, of the two, the premise and then there's the conclusion. We're missing the premise where the premise is saying that, well, he's innocent by nature, therefore he could never be a criminal, right? That's the idea. That's that missing premise. He could have not committed murder. I've known him since he was a kid. All right, the missing premise is that he's innocent by nature. Okay. All right, so with a name like Colgate, it has to be good. The hidden premise is that Colgate is a prestigious company, therefore it has to be good, right? It doesn't say that, hence the hidden premise. And so we're making the assumption with a name like Colgate, it has to be good. We're making the assumption that because it has a prestigious name, makes it a quality, product, all right? He's a U.S. citizen, so he's entitled to due process, right? The hidden premise is that all citizens in the U.S. are entitled to due process. All right, so this one, I like this entomeme because it leans into a Seinfeld episode. Look, I got some dated examples, but it's just what I go by, and it's what I remember, and I see them. I'm like, oh, that'd be great for class. So we're going to do one here. All right, an example of an entomeme is, it was Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle in the U.S. vice presidential debate in 1988. Just go with me on this one. This is why they use it in Seinfeld. It's a little dated. So, Lloyd Benson says to Dan Quayle, Senator, I have served with Jack Kennedy. I knew Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy was a friend of mine. Senator, you are no Jack Kennedy. All right. And what's the hidden premise? That Jack Kennedy was a great man. All right. But you aren't, right? Dan Quayle, you're not, because you are no Jack Kennedy. And I knew Jack Kennedy. The assumption being that Jack Kennedy was a great man. Okay. So in Seinfeld, we have the gymnast. And I am going to play you the gymnast, and you get to take a look and see how the two relate.